Just to start the night are going to drop where we get some clear skies, so a touch of frost early on, but then it's going to turn a bit milder with some cloudier, wetter, milder weather pushing its way in. Taking a closer look first thing tomorrow morning across the southeast, largely dry but quite cloudy here, wetter further west. Also quite a bit of rain across parts of Wales, northern England, and do watch out for some snow and some freezing rain leading to some icy patches if you're heading out tomorrow as well. Across Northern Ireland the heaviest rain will have cleared through, and across Scotland a bit of a west-east split. Across western parts largely dry by around 8-9 o'clock, and there will be some glimmers of sunshine, but in the east it's cloudier with some outbreaks of rain, sleet and hill snow continuing. Then through the day we have a fairly wet picture across this kind of central slice of the country. To the far south, avoiding this, in fact across the southwest things turning brighter later on, and further north-northwest some glimmers of sunshine across some parts of Scotland. Temperatures are turning a bit milder from the west, but where you're stuck under the cloud with the rain it is going to feel pretty chilly. Into Sunday, and it's a drier day, not totally dry. There will be some outbreaks of mostly light rain coming in from the east, some wintry showers across parts of Scotland, and even a bit of rain pushing into the far west too. But elsewhere, something a bit drier, perhaps even a bit brighter at times. And there's something a bit brighter to come early next week, but further rain arriving from the west. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway, with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 9 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. Patrick is getting a night off tonight as he's up very early to bring you breakfast with Emily tomorrow. But it is Valentine's Day today, so if you're at home and single tonight, I promise I'll do my best to make sure you're in very good company this evening. Tonight on the show.
No one ever raised any concerns about my expenses when I worked for Halifax Bank of Scotland.
Rachel can't recall. The once dubbed Iron Chancellor can't even seem to remember any of her prior employment history. She's facing a range of fresh allegations about her past following a bombshell investigation from none other than the BBC. And...
I think very high. I mean... odds on. 70%.
Yes, as Reform surge refuses to abate, we're going to find out if there's going to be a mega party pact between the Tories and Reform to obliterate the left in the next election. Also...
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe.
Strong words from the Vice President of the USA, J.D. Vance. He left a room of security experts shaking after he dropped truth bombs about the state of free speech and security in Europe. Plus, grave-robbing councils. Nottingham City Council has come under fire for throwing away tributes to the dead as it claims their new policy has left families with their trinkets and flowers ripped off of their graves. And a new poll shows Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are no longer considered royals. Is it time that we finally revoked their titles? Also,
they're not betraying Ukraine. They're not walking away from Ukraine.
Yeah, is the Ukraine war about to end? Donald Trump has said he's going to meet Vladimir Putin and put an end to it. Some people seem very unhappy about that, though, don't they? And I'm joined by my star panel, Stephen Wolfe, Suzanne Evans and Stella Shadakidou, who will be joining us and giving us our expert opinions on all of tonight's top stories. Anyway, get ready, Britain. Here we go. Are we headed for a Rachel Reeves shuffle? Next.
Good evening. It's just gone 9 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. JD Vance has warned Britain and the EU over what he claimed was backsliding free speech and democracy. Addressing the Munich Security Conference, the US Vice President suggested there's been a retreat of fundamental values in Europe. Vance also praised Munich's hospitality despite the city reeling from yesterday's car attack that left 30 injured. The 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker responsible has now been arrested and is due in court. Vance warned that the biggest threat facing the West is not external, but the threat from within.
What I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary has said we are some way from a negotiated peace between Russia and Ukraine. It comes after David Lammy met with the US Vice President in Munich today, where they discussed possibilities of a Ukraine peace deal.
I was very encouraged in our conversations about Ukraine. All of us have this desire to bring this horrendous war to an end. We share the view that there has to be an enduring peace. We recognise that this can't be Minsk 3.0. This has to be a serious negotiated peace. And there was an agreement that Zelensky and the Ukrainians have to be part of that negotiated deal.
Elsewhere, Donald Trump confirmed he had spoken with the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, last night and agreed to meet him, perhaps in the next few weeks. The conversation took place during a meeting with Trump's special envoy, Mark Burnett, at Downing Street. It comes after the president announced plans to impose reciprocal tariffs on countries that charge VAT on US goods. With £300 billion in UK-US trade at stake, ministers hope Britain could be exempt. In other news, an NHS children's surgeon has been suspended after 9 surgeries fell below expected standards. A review was commissioned in October after colleagues raised concerns about the doctor. The review was completed in January and looked at a number of complex paediatric hip surgery cases performed at Addenbrooke's Hospital over 2.5 years. And around 100 people have been evacuated after a fire broke out at celebrity hotspot the Chiltern Firehouse in London. 20 fire engines and around 125 firefighters were called to the luxury hotel on Chiltern Road in Marylebone today. That's according to the London Fire Brigade. Officers are still at the scene. The cause of the fire is unknown. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. Is it time to reshuffle Rachel? A major BBC investigation has thrown the Chancellor's past into the spotlight, sending shockwaves through Number 11. The investigation, which involved over 20 sources, many of them former colleagues, and gave access to receipts, emails, internal documents and everything that they need, suggests that Rachel Reeves was allegedly at the centre of an expenses scandal during her time in customer service at HBOS. Of course, we only recently discovered that she even held that position, as her LinkedIn claimed she was an economist there, until it was exposed late last year that that was indeed inaccurate. Well, the BBC alleges that before entering Parliament, Reeves was one of the 3 employees investigated by HBOS for using expenses to fund a lifestyle, with inappropriate spending on dinners, events, taxis and gifts. Among the purchases, handbags, perfume, earrings and wine for colleagues. Well, a former colleague told the BBC that Reeves and senior managers had a very cavalier attitude regarding the budget. Sounds familiar. One example, a £400 leaving meal paid for with a company card. And she also spent £152 on a handbag and perfume as a present for her boss using the bank's money, according to the whistleblower's report. Now, you might ask, why does this matter? Well, because this was all happening while HBOS itself was in crisis. Cast your minds back. The government arranged a takeover by Lloyds and an emergency taxpayer bailout of £20.5 billion. £20.5 billion. I'll leave you to decide whether that sounds, if true, like someone you could trust with your hard-earned taxpayer cash. Well, a whistleblower apparently raised these concerns about spending habits of Rachel Reeves and 2 other managers in early 2009. That's shortly after the alleged investigation. Reeves and her boss left the bank. The other senior manager went on sick leave and never returned. The BBC claims there was a widespread belief that that there had been an expenses investigation into Reeves and 2 colleagues. Of course, no direct link between the departures and the alleged investigation has been established. But the Chancellor, of course, has responded to these claims.
Well, no one ever raised any concerns about my expenses when I worked for Halifax Bank of Scotland. I submitted, had processed and had my expenses signed off in the proper way, as you would expect, and no issues were ever raised during my time at Halifax Bank of Scotland.
Yeah, and to be fair to Reeves, the BBC says there was no evidence in that internal investigation was ever completed or that there was ever findings of any wrongdoing. But it doesn't end there, unfortunately. The BBC also found that Reeves left the Bank of England 9 months earlier than was also stated on her LinkedIn profile.
Say that you'd worked at the Bank of England for a decade when in fact it was, well, it wasn't even 6 years, it was 5. I mean, that's exaggeration, isn't it?
Well, I worked at the Bank of England for 6 years, between 2000 and 2006. I was employed by the Bank of England, including I spent just over a year at the British Embassy.
Why did you say it was a decade?
Well, I think you're taking... it's one...
Now, that profile on LinkedIn's seen more updates than a Tory cabinet reshuffle. Talking of Tories, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch was quick to respond.
Keir Starmer said that he was bringing in a government of integrity. Telling lies and untruths on your CV, expenses fraud, which is what the allegations are very serious things. And I do think she needs to come out and explain what's going on.
And if you thought it was all over, think again. In 2015, Reeves was among 19 MPs who had their official credit cards suspended by the Parliamentary Expenses Watchdog after failing to show their spending was valid. At the time, she owed more than £4,000, but she did pay it back only after her credit card was blocked. Despite all of this, Downing Street spokesperson insists the Prime Minister has no concerns about her conduct. Isn't this the same Prime Minister who sacked Louise Haigh after her trustworthiness issues? Anyway, so is she the Iron Chancellor or can't recall Rachel? You can't claim to be all over the detail and conveniently forget simple details about your previous employment. You can't claim credibility if you inflate your experience and qualifications. Labour has positioned itself as the moral alternative to the Conservatives, vowing to restore trust in British politics. How many times have we heard that? But when the Chancellor's own history is riddled with questions, and not even the Chancellor herself has the answers, how on earth can the public trust her with their hard-earned cash? But let's get the thoughts of my panel. Former Labour advisor Stella Shantikidu, political consultant Suzanne Evans, director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity Stephen Wolfe. Stella, come on, we've got to start with you for a bit of balance and fairness here. I mean, look, it's quite a litany of things that are alleged against the Chancellor. Is her position completely untenable as Chancellor now?
Alex, have you watched The Wolf of Wall Street?
I have. It's a great film.
So you are aware of the culture that generally exists in banks here and in the US and elsewhere. Do you know how much money bankers to this day, not just in 2009, which is 16 years ago when these complaints were filed, and they were never, by the way, no issues were raised with Rachel Reeves herself. So are you aware of the culture where bankers will reward their staff? Because, let's face it, they work them really hard, 7 days a week. And they reward them with massive bonuses, with extremely expensive bottles of champagne, extremely expensive meals. This is a taken in that culture. Now, my question is, why was this complaint that was raised 16 years ago coming to light now? And I have a theory. I have a theory. Listen to my theory. Listen to my theory. She's been Chancellor for a while. My theory is the banks, the lobbyists of these banks, they have realized that Rachel Reeves is threatening their interests when it comes to taxing wealth and addressing wealth inequality. Because they know that Labour wants to tackle wealth inequality. And they want to stop whoever is threatening their interests.
You could argue she was very good at spreading wealth inequality because she shared the money out quite a lot of people, allegedly. Allegedly.
I mean,
Suzanne, come on, after you.
Rachel Reeves' credibility was shot before this. This should really be, if there were any justice in the political world, this would be the end of her. Regardless of a bank's culture, the BBC doesn't just make allegations like this on a whim. Journalists have done their homework, and they've done their homework very carefully, and they wouldn't be putting this into the public domain unless they were pretty sure of their facts. Now, she's screwed up the economy, fiddled the fiscal rules to give herself some extra borrowing, and she's still blown that budget. This is clearly a woman that doesn't have any concept of budgeting at all. As Oscar Wilde, and as Oscar Wilde's Lady Bracknell would say, a handbag? You know, 152 quid on a handbag to give to her boss, and she claims it on expenses, regardless of any culture in the bank, Stella.
No, you know very well they do far worse. They do far worse.
And wrong. She's not fit to be Chancellor.
Well, look, Steve, obviously these are allegations. Where, you know, the BBC hasn't been able to prove there was any wrongdoing, so we've got to be careful. I don't want to get anyone into trouble. But we can still look at the CV stuff. That's inflated. You know, she definitely got that wrong multiple times. That's not once, it's twice now. The BBC have obviously verified it changed again. There's something to be said about that, surely.
Well, there is. Well, I'm going to turn around with Stella. I just wish Wolf of Wall Street was actually happening when I was working in banks from about 1990.
Maybe you didn't do so well. Maybe try harder next time. I don't know.
I did really well, but the culture you're talking about is nonsense. That's why it's in movies. It's nothing to do with reality. Yes, people work really hard in the city, and that was an eye-opener for me, who came from a socialist left initially, when my eyes were open to people working tremendously hard. And
You've never seen hundreds of pounds being spent on meals in the city.
Hang on a minute. And yes, I saw people getting enormous bonuses, and yes, I saw people paying for meals expensively, but they did so on expenses, and they were monitored and checked.
Just like Rachel Reeves.
Okay. No, what we have here is accusations that she spent them outside of the remit that everybody else had to do. If I did it, I would have been fired. And so that's the point at principle here. If these accusations are true, true, then she should be fired. And why are we looking back at 16 years in the same way that you look back on all the allegations against politicians of the right? You check them and say, oh, he was a racist. He said this comment there. He made an accusation about the NHS there. Paul Nuttall was driven out of UKIP for accusations he didn't have his CV correct. That's the same sort of argument. What you want to do if you want to justify being honest and decent in politics is say, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, and that's the main point.
Well, Stella, let's just build on that for a second, because let's assume that these allegations are true, and let's say it's someone different. Let's say it's not Rachel Reeves. Just say it's someone else, right? Would you expect that person to be fired from their job if they're a politician who's in charge of a high office in the country? Would you agree with that? That they, if there's an allegation of scandal in expenses, there's an allegation of inflated CV, would you agree that person should step down?
So, Alex, 16 years from now, you run and you become chancellor.
Hypothetical scenario.
No, because the situation is that there was nothing to answer for. She wasn't even asked about these allegations. Allegations happens all the time. Her employer clearly thought that there was no case for Rachel Reeves to ask, so she continued doing whatever it is that she was doing. The case is closed, and this is what the BBC found. And if you're trusting the BBC, which it's the first time I'm hearing this on GB News, that you're trusting the BBC, but since you are trusting the BBC, then trust what their investigation found, which is that at the end of the day there was no case to answer for. You do not know. Exactly, I'm sorry, but you have this handful of people who are saying this, but on the other hand, you have 11 colleagues of Rachel Reeves who have come out and said there was nothing untoward about the way Rachel Reeves acted, and this was totally normal. Yes. Not MPs.
Sorry.
Colleagues from Halifax.
Investigation then. If Rachel Reeves is innocent, let's look into this properly, and then she'll be exonerated.
I thought that was what the BBC did.
What really shocks me is Keir Starmer's response to this. He's refusing to have an investigation. He's completely out of order. And the way he's defending her as well, talking about how she's balanced the books and given us stability in her budget. What planet is he on? It's a disaster.
Well,
she is a disastrous chancellor. As the BBC suggests, this undermines her whole credibility, and unless she's exonerated and unless there's a proper investigation, she should go.
I feel there's going to be a lot more spoken about this to come, but now we're giving you a chance to win a great British giveaway, aren't we? We've got 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's all the details you need.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, coming up, the US Vice President launches a scathing attack on Europe.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe.
Yeah, but up next is our head-to-head. Whispers of a Tory reform pact are heating up again as a veteran Tory MP says there's a 70% chance of one taking place. Well, let's find out. A Reform UK councillor and an ex-Tory MP join me in just a moment. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We'll see you after the break.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
That's football.
Well,
you know, it's the hope that kills you.
It does. It gives you highs, it gives you lows. I mean, if you're an Everton fan at the moment, you probably had far too many lows. But as you know, I'm a Nottingham Forest fan.
Well, you must be having a huge high.
But you had one of the greatest footballers ever to grace the game, right? And that was Dixie Dean.
Yeah, absolutely. William Ralph Dean didn't like being called Dixie, but that was his nickname. And he was born in 1907. He was my grandfather's best mate. I'm an Everton shareholder. I've been, attached to the club all my life, and so was my father, so was my grandfather, our greatest ever player.
So back in the day when players like Dixie Dean were playing football for big crowds in, a proper...
72,000.
Yeah, a proper working class sport back in the day, weren't it, football? Not like it is today. You've got to be pretty wealthy to afford a ticket.
Even in the 70s, right, and I've seen some, I do like looking back on the football that I watched as a kid. Even in the 70s now, I've seen pictures of the turnstiles, as we used to call them, with a sign at the top, 5 shillings for the Eastern Terrace. 5 shillings. Yeah. Last time I turned down a ticket to go to a football match was Arsenal, who wanted me to pay £830 for a seat in an executive lounge. And though I could have afforded it, because I've worked all my life like you, I just thought at that point, that's ridiculous.
Well, you should have told him you were Keir Starmer's security man. You'd have probably got him for nothing.
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But you go back to the 1930s and 1940s, even the 1960s and 70s. The footballers would walk to the ground and play a game, and then walk back and go for a few beers in the pub.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. It's now time for our head-to-head. Yes, there's been a lot of chatter about the prospect of a Reform Tory pact in order to form a more palpable threat to Labour. Several prominent Tories, including Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, have hinted that such a deal would be beneficial. Well, just earlier today, he posted on X, commenting on a recent local by-election, saying, "Look what happens when the Conservatives and Reform don't oppose each other. The Socialists can be defeated." Well, speaking exclusively to GB News, veteran Tory Sir Edward Lee spoke to our Christopher Hope about the prospects of a Tory Reform pact. Here's what he said.
What are the odds on Reform and the Tories merging to be one party at the next election?
Oh, I think very high. I mean...
odds on?
70%.
Oh, and in response, a Labour Party spokesman has told GB News that the Tories are plotting a dodgy backroom deal with Reform to deceive the public. Kemi Badenoch has previously shut down the idea of any merger, as have senior figures in Reform UK, of course. But a lot can happen in a few short years. Could Sir Edward Lee turn out to be right after all? Well, I'm joined now by Reform UK councillor Harrison Ormond-Varty and former Tory MP Jane Stevenson. Welcome along, both. Jane, I'd like to start with you. Look, obviously, there's a long way to go to the next election, but lots of chatter about this as the two parties, Reform and the Tories, are polling 50% upwards when combined. Is this a good idea?
I think it is a good idea. If you look at general elections since 2010, about half of the electorate votes for left-leaning parties and about half votes for right-leaning parties. By splitting it, and it happened in this recent election, we now have 500 left-wing MPs in the most disastrous parliament. We're not getting scrutiny, we're not getting balance, and it's horrific. So for everyone on the right, I think our priority should be find common ground and defeat Labour, because we just have to get rid of this disastrous government.
Yeah, well, Harrison, looks, you know, there's obviously a lot of calls for this merger to take place. I'm assuming you're against the idea.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people need to realise that Reform are attracting voters across the board, not just from the Conservatives. And I think something that's really key is when you look at these latest polls, the biggest portion of where they're gaining voters is non-voters. So that's people who have previously been disillusioned by the likes of the Conservatives. Now, I personally don't think it's as easy to say, OK, let's just say Reform are polling at 25% and the Conservatives are polling at 20%. You can't just add those two together, because there's a large portion of Reform's base that would simply be put off by the Conservatives, and especially the new type of Conservatives which are in, because if you look at the type of Conservatives that are in, they're very Lib Dem-y. So culturally, it wouldn't really work, in my opinion, anyway. So I personally think it wouldn't happen, and there's no wonder that the Conservatives want to meet with Reform. It's almost like, you know, Blockbuster just before they go bust saying, actually, Netflix will be part of you. It doesn't work like that.
Well, Jane, that's a good point. A lot of people are saying the Tories are done and dusted now with Kemi Badenoch not being able to increase her polling. Are they just trying to ride on the back of Reform's coattails, perhaps?
I don't think so. No, we're separate parties, clearly. But, Harrison, you were elected as a Conservative not very long ago. You got 50% of the vote in your ward, and 43% was with the Lib Dems. So in that seat, had a Reform person stood, or if you'd have stood as a Reform candidate, clearly they'd have got a Lib Dem. It's not that simple, but I think, to me, in 2019, Nigel could have been really savvy and not... he didn't challenge any sitting Conservative. He could have done a quality assessment of people he agreed with, and those he had an issue with, those towards the real centre of politics in the Conservative Party, he could have challenged. So I think where there's common ground, it just makes sense. We are in our electoral system. It's not pie in the sky. We have to put country before party, before pride, find common principles. If those principles aren't there, you can endorse or challenge based on that, maybe. There's a long way to go. I'm waiting to see what Kemi says, find some core Conservative principles, which I know she has. I was at PPS in her department, so we're a long way off yet.
Well, Jane,
but I do think...
Just on Kemi quickly, because obviously she's not managing to break through very strongly, at least that's the criticism of her, and the polls for the Tories haven't really moved while Reform is surging. Do you think if there were to be a Reform Tory pact, hypothetically speaking, that Kemi Badenoch would be able to hang on there and become Prime Minister, or the red line would be from Reform that Nigel Farage must be Prime Minister? Do you think that's plausible?
Oh, my goodness, that is a lot of what if, what if, what ifs. I think we need Kemi to set her stall out. I know her well. I know she has good principles. I back Rob Jenrick purely because he was being really clear about things like the ECHR. But I hope the Conservative position will win back a lot of Reform voters or people who are saying they're thinking of voting Reform. But at the minute, Reform is all things to all people. It's taking people from Labour, it's taking people from anywhere and everywhere. But actually, there's no baggage, which is an advantage. But it's like the Harry Potter mirror of Erised. You see what you want to see with reform. And as they start coming out with policies, do they want more state intervention, less state intervention, green policy? All of these things, we need to see those detailed plans. We are a long way from the next election. So there is a lot to be decided and to play for, but there is a lot of common ground.
Harrison, look, I mean, obviously Nigel Farage has come out very strongly on this and said absolutely not. He feels, burnt by Boris. He feels that the Tories butchered Brexit. Do you think that there would be any plausible way that, am I right in saying, Harrison, that you defected from the Tories or you were a Tory? Could you see yourself going back?
Well, yeah, I mean, she's right to point out that in 2022 I was elected as a Conservative. Now, Reform, isn't in the position that they are now. And in fairness, the Conservatives, I maybe naively thought, still had a chance to do very well. We just came out of COVID, so I'll give them a bit of benefit of the doubt. But even in those final couple of years, we still didn't see what we needed to see. And I think that is essentially why Reform should never do a pact with the Conservatives. Now, that's way above my pay grade. I certainly wouldn't negotiate those. But in the sense that, they were to do that, it's the same case, and this will be the Achilles heel of the Conservatives in the sense that anything that they say, it will be, yes, but you had your chance and you didn't do it. So why on earth would Reform, get rid of their credibility in the sense of if they team up with these people, it'll be the same arguments thrown at them. And personally, although 4 years is a long time in politics, I personally don't think that those voters will go back, just like Labour voters took forever for them to forgive Labour, and they didn't really even forgive them if we look at the general election results. They only did it because the Conservatives did so badly. So I personally think that their credibility is shot, and that is beyond the 4-year plan, in my opinion.
Jane, final quick word from you before we wrap this up. Do you think the Tories can get their credibility back, and what does Kemi Badenoch need to do in order to win those Reform votes?
Well, I think if you look at all the by-elections since the general election even, Conservatives have won most of them. We've done really well in lots of by-elections, even when some Reform are standing. But on the ones where that vote is split, there is an issue. The country is really different. So here in the Black Country, our Conservative members and Reform members have a lot of common ground. Maybe Surrey is slightly different, slightly leafier. We've got that immigration message. All Conservatives locally here really support strong, robust action, and we were frustrated with the last government, but clearly parties are made up of people and decent people on the right. First mission, get rid of Labour.
OK, thank you both very, very much. That's Reform UK councillor Harrison Allman-Varty and former Tory MP Jane Stevenson. Thank you both for joining us. Coming up, for 30 years, Paul Mason has honoured his mother's memory until a council policy removed flowers and mementos from her grave without warning. Heartbroken, he calls it disrespectful and devastating. Are the authorities disrespecting the dead? But next, US Vice President J.D. Vance has blasted the UK and Europe, claiming free speech and democracy are in retreat. He criticised Britain over protest laws and immigration policies, but are his claims fair on us here in Britain? I'm Alex Armstrong, and this is Patrick Christys Tonight. See you after the break.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
If you're looking to escape the cold weather in the UK and find some winter sun, it will be fine in Spain this weekend, but rather unsettled through much of Italy and Greece, an area of low pressure, and the Burao wind for Croatia continues to blow very strong, particularly towards the north. Meanwhile, much more settled weather, above average temperatures and plenty of sunshine through the Balearics, Spain as well, but an area of rain is going to push into Portugal, and that's going to likely affect parts of the Canaries next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Good evening, I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Through this weekend, I think Sunday's going to be the drier of the 2 days. That's because many of us are going to have some fairly wet weather pushing through as we go through tomorrow due to a frontal system that's already brought rain across parts of southwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland so far today, and it's going to continue to progress northeastwards overnight. That being said, not really reaching the far north of Scotland or the southeast where it's going to stay largely dry. With the rain, it is going going to be quite heavy at times across parts of Wales and the southwest, but as well as this, we do have the risk of some sleet, some snow, even a bit of freezing rain. Temperatures to start in the night are going to drop where we get some clear skies, so a touch of frost early on, but then it's going to turn a bit milder with some cloudier, wetter, milder weather pushing its way in. Taking a closer look first thing tomorrow morning across the southeast, largely dry but quite cloudy here, wetter further west, also quite a bit of rain across parts of Wales, northern England, and do watch out for some snow and some freezing rain leading to some icy patches if you're heading out tomorrow as well. Across Northern Ireland, the heaviest rain will have cleared through, and across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split across western parts, largely dry by around 8-9 o'clock, and there will be some glimmers of sunshine, but in the east it's cloudier with some outbreaks of rain, sleet and hill snow continuing. Then through the day we have a fairly wet picture across this kind of central slice of the country. To the far south, avoiding this, in fact across the southwest, things turning brighter later on, and further north-northwest, some glimmers of sunshine across some parts of Scotland. Temperatures are turning a bit milder from the west, but where you're stuck under the cloud with the rain, it is going to feel pretty chilly. Into Sunday, and it's a drier day, not totally dry. There will be some outbreaks of mostly light rain coming in from the east, some wintry showers across parts of Scotland, and even a bit of rain pushing into the far west too. But elsewhere, something a bit drier, perhaps even a bit brighter at times. And there's something a bit brighter to come early next week, but further rain arriving from the west. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News, 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. US Vice President J.D. Vance has sparked controversy with sharp criticism of the UK and Europe, claiming free speech and democracy are in retreat. He was speaking at the Munich Security Conference, where he accused Britain of backsliding on civil liberties, citing the arrest of anti-abortion activists praying silently in her head, and new restrictions on public demonstrations. Here's a short snapshot of what he had to say.
I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for.
That's strong words there, but Vice President Vance also linked immigration to rising security concerns and warned European leaders they're ignoring voter demands. But are his claims fair, or is he misrepresenting Britain? I'm joined now by Republican strategist and founder of FreePressFail.com, Corinne Clark. Corinne, thank you very much for joining me. What do you make of the Vice President's words there? Do you think free speech is in retreat in Europe, and particularly the UK?
I definitely think that he was making a great point that has been a big topic of discussion. This actually reminds me of a viral video, I think last week, with Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson discussing the same thing. What is it that you won World War II for if you cannot speak freely in your own country, if you cannot defend your own borders? I think this is something America is dealing with as well. So he's not just singling out the UK or Europe, but there are definitely some issues with free speech. And a lot of people are wondering, what is the freedom that we're defending if you can't even share your opinion without being thrown in jail.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been a lot of criticism of the United States, particularly under the previous presidency, because many of the big tech companies led the way, you could argue, in censoring information and facts. Perhaps Europe feels that it needed to abide by that Biden presidency and the precedent that it set during that period of time. Would you agree with that?
It's a possibility. I do think that Britain has gone even a little bit farther than social media censorship. I think JD Vance actually referenced a case where someone in the UK was arrested for praying outside of an abortion clinic. And that is something that happened in the United States, too. It just went to the Supreme Court. It's a huge, huge problem. And that does need to be addressed here. But I'm not sure if they were taking Biden's note or if this is just a growing issue among Western nations in general, not really Biden particularly, but just a problem with Western democracies. And I think it's been building up over the last 30 to 40 years. And Trump and JD Vance have been strong against that. And hopefully the UK will follow and we'll see some freedom return to the UK as well.
Yeah, well, that lady who was arrested, by the way, was acquitted of all charges in the end. And, you know, I do agree, broadly speaking, with what JD Vance had to say. I do feel that many Brits feel that their freedom of speech has at least been under attack in some form since at least the last 8 months or so. You know, is Donald Trump going to be the guy that says, actually, you know, Europe, if you don't do something about these free speech policies, we're going to put tariffs on you? You know, he's potentially putting them on other countries for lesser things. Do you feel that Donald Trump would intervene in European social policy by using the force of America?
Positive that would be his move, though he does love economic tariffs as a negotiation tactic. So it's not off the table completely. But I think first, what we're trying to do is encourage people to rise up against these policies that are just terrible for their nations. And, you know, he did single out the UK, but it's not just the UK. Romania canceled an election saying that, you know, Facebook ads were influencing people too much. And that kind of thing is happening. That's even worse than what the UK is dealing with. And he did bring up all of those issues, too. So I think it is something this administration is bringing attention to. And I hope that they're encouraging the people in those nations to put pressure on their politicians and to make some real change like we are doing here in America.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a little bit about the Ukraine war later on in the show today. But, you know, Trump is already facing a lot of pushback from European leaders. Is there a concern by, you know, the vice president or the president perhaps, or maybe even Republicans in general, that Europe is not going to listen to Trump, or they've learnt how to deal with him since 2016 and will push back heavily on him, and perhaps that will drive Europe away from America? Is there a concern about that?
I don't really know if Europe has the upper hand in that kind of negotiation. They can play hardball if they would want to, but I think that our economy is stronger in the end. The world needs America more than America needs the rest of the world. So I think they're going to play hard. I know that Trump is not popular overseas, that's fine with us. Trump is always going to put America first, and that is what he will do with this war in Ukraine. We are not Ukraine. This is not our war. And I think he's going to be tough on Europe and make that clear. So we'll see what kind of games come out of that. But I do not worry that there will be major retaliation from Europe.
Yeah. Do you think JD Vance is a better face and voice, perhaps, to, you know, give this message to Europeans? Maybe he's a little less, you know, what's what I'm looking for? Maybe perhaps outspoken or aggressive in his tone. He seems to put it in much more political terms, so to speak. Do you think he's a better face to deliver these kind of messages, Connie?
He's a different face. So that always is helpful when there are strong opinions against our president. So he's a fresh face to offer those ideas. But what we love about this administration is they are on the same page. He's not offering some different playbook. He is offering the America First agenda. And if they want to hear it from JD Vance rather than Trump, that's fine with Trump, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be getting along relatively well, but Trump has already said that he's not backing yet JD Vance as his successor. Do you think that JD Vance is now out to make a name for himself by being quite strong and, you know, appealing to that MAGA base abroad as well?
You know what? 4 years is such a long time. I think it's smart to not put all your eggs in one basket at this point. But JD Vance has done a terrific job. I think he is close with President Trump, and he is pushing forward President Trump's agenda. If he continues down that path, I think he will remain very popular with the MAGA base.
Okay.
But, you know, you never know.
Corinne Clark, thank you so much. Republican strategist and founder of Free Press Fail, Corinne Clark there joining us. Coming up, is the war in Ukraine going to end?
They're not betraying Ukraine. They're not walking away from Ukraine.
And why isn't everyone happy about it? Interesting stuff. But next, for 30 years, Paul Mason has honoured his mother's memory until that council policy removed flowers and mementos from her grave without warning. Heartbroken, he calls it disrespectful and devastating. Are the authorities disrespecting the dead? I'm Alex Armstrong, and this is Patrick Christys tonight. I'll see you after the break.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, you know I like an auction.
Yes.
And I've bought some strange things at auction before you have as well, haven't you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, Ellie would throw this in the bin that you're coming up with now.
How about this? Admiral Lord Nelson's hair.
No.
Cut. I mean, is this a bit spooky? Cut as he lay dying during the Battle of Trafalgar, so someone's gone, oh, we'll just have a little bit of that there. In 1805, is on sale in Jersey, and it's a little cup. How much would you pay for the hair?
No, nothing. It would go in the bin, straight in the bin.
What? Even what? Nelson? That's very disrespectful to the British culture and heritage.
I think it's disrespectful that he lay there dying and someone thought, we'll take a quick stick.
Well, maybe they just had. Maybe they thought, you know, because there's obviously the famous painting, isn't there, of the Battle of Trafalgar? Maybe they thought we'll give him a quick haircut, and then they kept their £15,000, 15 grand.
Where's the hair come from? What part of the body?
His head, Eamon.
Well, it could be his underarm. I don't know. You know, it depends.
All right, let me have a little look.
You would bid
it's very curly. I think it's his head. It's his head. What?
You would bid more for his head than, say, his underarm.
Well, I think so, yeah, I would hope so, yeah.
Or anywhere else.
I would hope so. A little less whiffy there, the head hair. And there it is. And it's in a little pot.
No.
And the only way you can probably find out is if you DNA test it, I guess. It's definitely his.
Whoever pays for that is bonkers.
Well,
that's creepy.
I was seriously tempted to make a bid for a toupee. Not for me, but as worn by John Wayne.
John Wayne's wig?
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Why?
Well, why I didn't get it was my wife said to me, that is not coming into the house.
Well, she's right.
She's
right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day. Well, for 30 years, Paul Mason has visited his mother's grave weekly. That's at Wilford Hill Crematorium. But a Nottingham City Council policy enforced in October 2024 has allegedly stripped graves of flowers and mementos without warning. Paul's tributes were removed and discarded, and he claims council vehicles are damaging graves. He called it disrespectful and disgusting, and he argues the policy amounts to grave robbing. The council insists grave owners were notified, but Paul and others say they never received any such message. How has this been allowed to happen? Well, joining me now is local resident Paul Mason. Hi there, Paul. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is really important because, you know, people, when they lay their loved ones to rest, want to pay tribute to their families, and they often do that in little ways that are meaningful to them. Tell us about your experiences, and of course, you know, you haven't heard anything from the council. What could have been done better?
Well, the thing is my dad set the grave up 35 years ago when my mum passed away, and naturally he was responsible for the grave. But obviously you do your maths and you add 35 to, my mum was 55 when she died, my dad would be 90 now. But he passed away 8 years ago. So there's been no communication at all about who owns the grave or anything. Obviously my dad just said the grave's ours, you know, because he sorted things out. So apparently our grave ran out on the 2020. So for 5 years we were none the wiser that we didn't own the grave. So they have now a policy that says we have the right to just come along and remove everything because we own the ground. So that's exactly what they did. But they said they wrote to us, but no one's received anything of any kind. So, plus the fact, I think my dad moved house nearly 30 years ago. So if they've written to the original address, it's absolutely crazy what they've done. And to take things away and throw them in the bin and not inform you and say they have a right to do that, it's just disgusting. And then the graves are being driven over by their little vans to go and do whatever maintenance they're doing. And they said in one of the statements that the grave was driven over recently. Those time marks have been there for over 2 years. They've not done a thing with it, and they're just telling lots of fibs. It's just disgusting.
So, I mean, look, talk me through this policy. I mean, this is news to me. So once you've owned a grave for a certain period of time, that grave then becomes, is it government property, council property?
I believe the ground is council property, but the gravestone is ours. So when my father set 4 graves into this ground, for myself, my brother, my dad sadly passed away 8 years ago. He decided to be cremated because he remarried. But we've got ground there. But now we've been told we don't own the grave because we haven't renewed the contract. But my dad, well, I was 20 years old when my mum passed away, and my brother was 15. So in all fairness, we're not going to understand anything like that. And then for 35 years, it's a grave. We've been told it's there. Paperwork was done. My dad had the paperwork, but no one told us that it was a short-lived thing.
Yeah, and so have you been able to speak to a local councillor about this? Can you appeal this decision in any way?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually complained. I rang up the manager of the crematorium and the cemetery. The lady was quite flippant and said, we have a policy. We can use that policy. We don't have to inform you. We can take things away and we don't have to keep them for you. We don't have to tell you anything. I made a complaint through Have You All Say at Nottingham City Council. It's what I was told by this lady to do if I wanted to make a complaint. The council forwarded it back to this lady to deal with the complaint and told me I had no complaint to answer to because she was kind of sticking up for her own. It's shocking. And the thing that's really upset me is it's minor items that have been thrown in the bin. They're worthless, really, but it's like a plant, there's a solar light. I don't know if they've actually been thrown in the bin or they've been taken away and been used.
So the sort of stuff they're throwing away, Paul, is just like plants and flowers that are left there. Do they do it every day? Is it a week? Is there a time limit on this sort of stuff?
I have no idea. All I know is that they've said they've been putting things around notice boards for people to read. I'm not being funny. When I go to a graveside, I'm not interested in reading notice boards. I'm going to put flowers on my mum's grave, tidy it all up, get rid of all. I mean, I'm the one that cleans the grave. There's dead leaves all over it. They don't do anything. And then they say they've got a right to do all this. And yesterday was my 55th birthday.
Congratulations.
And my mum passed away at 55, so it was a big day yesterday. I was that upset about what they've done, I couldn't go to the grave because I felt, one, it's been tampered with, and two, I've been told it's not mine.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be many viewers watching this who will be shocked to hear this. I don't know if this is probably not a policy that's enacted in every local council, but, you know, there's got to be better ways for residents to be informed of policies that are going to impact them, and especially, you know, people who passed on. You know, it's very important to them to be able to go to those graves. I mean, have your local councillors responded to you at all? Have you spoken to them, your elected representatives?
I rang with the Deputy Nottingham City Council, Deputy Councillor. I rang twice, left a voice message on his mobile because he's left it there for people to ring. I've sent an email. I've heard nothing.
Yeah. Well, Paul
So,
Mason, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. Of course, it's really important, and I implore everybody, particularly in your area, to speak to the local councils, because I think this is really important that people are able to pay tribute to their loved ones when they pass away, no matter how long it is. But look, Paul, thank you for joining us. I'm going to move on. We've got a response here from Nottingham City Council spokesman. They said there are two types of graves at our cemeteries: traditional graves that can have a headstone and lawn graves. All grave owners are made aware of rules about unofficial memorials and trinkets. Plus, there are notices around the site. Daily burials and ongoing ground maintenance are essential to ensuring a respectful and well-kept environment. Recent adverse weather conditions have temporarily made the tracks more apparent. However, we want to reassure visitors that once our work is complete, all affected areas will be fully restored. Okay, coming up, a new poll finds the Duke of Sussex is no longer considered a royal alongside Meghan Markle. And we're also going to be talking about the end of the Ukraine war, as Donald Trump has said he's going to meet Vladimir Putin and put an end to it. And some people are a little bit angry about that, but let's see. I'm Alex Armstrong, and this is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Through this weekend, I think Sunday's going to be the drier of the 2 days. That's because many of us are going to have some fairly wet weather pushing through as we go through tomorrow due to a frontal system that's already brought rain across parts of southwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland so far today, and it's going to continue to progress northeastwards overnight. That being said, not really reaching the far north of Scotland or the southeast, where it's going to stay largely dry. With the rain, it is going to be quite heavy at times across parts of Wales and the southwest, but as well as this, we do have the risk of some sleet, some snow, even a bit of freezing rain. Temperatures to start the night are going to drop where we get some clear skies, so a touch of frost early on, but then it's going to turn a bit milder with some cloudier, wetter, milder weather pushing its way in. Taking a closer look first thing tomorrow morning across the southeast, largely dry but quite cloudy here, wetter further west, also quite a bit of rain across parts of Wales, northern England, and do watch out for some snow and some freezing rain leading to some icy patches if you're heading out tomorrow as well. Across Northern Ireland, the heaviest rain will have cleared through, and across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split. Across western parts, largely dry by around 8-9 o'clock, and there will be some glimmers of sunshine, but in the east it's cloudier with some outbreaks of rain, sleet and hill snow continuing. Then through the day, we have a fairly wet picture across this kind of central slice of the country. To the far south, avoiding this, in fact, across the southwest, things turning brighter later on, and further north-northwest, some glimmers of sunshine across some parts of Scotland. Temperatures are turning a bit milder from the west, but where you're stuck under the cloud with the rain, it is going to feel pretty chilly. Into Sunday, and it's a drier day, not totally dry. There will be some outbreaks of mostly light rain coming in from the east, some wintry showers across parts of Scotland, and even a bit of rain pushing into the far west too. But elsewhere, something a bit drier, perhaps even a bit brighter at times. And there's something a bit brighter to come early next week, but further rain arriving from the west. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening, it's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. Yes, Patrick is getting a night off. He's up very early with Emily tomorrow to bring you a brilliant breakfast show. But it is Valentine's Day today, so if you're at home and single tonight, I promise I'm going to do my best to make sure you're in very good company this evening. Tonight, on the show.
They're not betraying Ukraine. They're not walking away from it.
Is the Ukraine war going to end? Well, Donald Trump has said he's going to meet Vladimir Putin and put an end to the Ukrainian war. Some people are a little bit unhappy about that, though. Also, a new poll shows Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are no longer considered royals. Is it time their titles were finally axed? And I'm joined by my fantastic panel, Stephen Wolfe, Suzanne Evans and Stella Chadwick. I can't pronounce your last name, sorry about that, Stella. We'll also be giving their expert opinions on tonight's top stories. Plus, what's going on here?
And don't give me the work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people Friday. There's not a goddamn person to get a hold of.
I'm going to tell you exactly what he's talking about that I reckon a lot of you at home are going to agree with me. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Why are so many people upset about a war ending? Next.
Good evening. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. JD Vance has warned Britain and the EU over what he claimed was backsliding free speech and democracy. Addressing the Munich Security Conference, the US Vice President suggested there's been a retreat of fundamental values in Europe. Vance also praised Munich's hospitality, despite the city still reeling from yesterday's car attack that left 30 injured. The 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker responsible has now been arrested and is due in court. Vance warned that the biggest threat facing the West is not external, but the threat from within.
I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary has said we are some way from a negotiated peace between Russia and Ukraine. It comes after David Lammy met with the US Vice President in Munich today, where they discussed possibilities of a Ukraine peace deal.
I was very encouraged in our conversations about Ukraine. All of us have this desire to bring this horrendous war to an end. We share the view that there has to be an enduring peace. We recognise that this can't be Minsk 3.0. This has to be a serious negotiated peace, and there was an agreement that Zelensky and the Ukrainians have to be part of that negotiated deal.
Elsewhere, Donald Trump confirmed he spoke with the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, last night and agreed to meet with him, perhaps in the next few weeks. The conversation took place during a meeting with Trump's special envoy, Mark Burnett, at Downing Street. It comes after the president announced plans to impose reciprocal tariffs on countries that charge VAT on US goods. With £300 billion in the UK-US trade at stake, ministers hope Britain could be exempt. In other news, an NHS children's surgeon has been suspended after 9 surgeries fell below expected standards. A review was commissioned in October after colleagues raised concerns about the doctor. The review was completed in January and looked at a number of complex paediatric hip surgery cases performed at Aidensbrook Hospital over 2.5 years. And around 100 people have been evacuated after a fire broke out at celebrity hotspot the Chiltern Firehouse in London. 20 fire engines and around 125 firefighters were called to the luxury hotel in Marylebone today. That's according to the London Fire Brigade. Speaking outside the building, one of the firefighters said the fire is completely under control in there now, but the hotel is probably going to need a large refurbishment. The cause of the fire remains unknown. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. Donald Trump has spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The war in Europe is going to end. And in my opinion, it can't come soon enough. But I want to get one thing straight from the outset here. I do not, in any way, shape or form, support Russia's illegal invasion of Ukrainian territory. But we must face the cold, hard truth about how we got here. Under successive European and American governments, the strategy was to cozy up to Russia, to buy trillions worth of their gas and oil, and turned a blind eye to their aggression when they annexed Crimea. Remember, this was during Obama's presidency, and Cameron was our Prime Minister then. And let's not forget, this crisis has its roots going back all the way to Blair and Bush when they welcomed Putin into the inner circle of global politics. And since then, Russia has taken advantage of what I see, and I believe, as weak Western leadership. Leadership that has essentially funded this war through our dependency on Russian resources, emboldening Putin to act with the audacity we're witnessing today. When Trump became president in 2016, he was a breath of fresh air. He called out Europe's disastrous policies that favoured Russia, warning they would regret it. And guess what? They laughed at him.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers.
Yeah, you can see them there just laughing at him. And what happened next? Well, you know the rest of the story. And even in 2023, at the height of the Ukrainian war, the EU funneled 29 billion euros into buying Russian oil and gas. Do you think that's enough to fund the war, perhaps? This came after a brief 4-year period of peace between Russia and the West. But not long after Trump left office, Putin, facing what I believe to be an increasingly weak and senile presidency under Joe Biden, took up arms again, didn't they? The war has been nothing short of a horror show. Rape, murder, and millions of lives lost on both sides. It has ravaged our economies, with energy bills skyrocketing due to our reliance on Russian energy. We made the wrong alliances, sold off our security and independence to foreign powers, and worst of all, we did it to our enemies. So why should we end the war? Well, here is the harsh reality. Neither Ukraine or Russia can win this war. It's a war with no winners. Russia has nuclear weapons. There's no scenario where Ukraine storms into Russia and topples Putin without risking a nuclear holocaust. Europe is supporting Ukraine, of course, that is financially drained. And it's still dependent, clearly, on some Russian energy for survival. NATO is a defensive organisation, not offensive. If it attacks, we're looking at World War III. And frankly, without American support, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv within weeks. Weeks. We need peace, not because we're giving in, but because the cost of continuing this war is too high. It's too high in human lives, in our economy, and in the risk of global escalation that drags everybody into a damning World War III. Is that what you want? It's also taken our politicians' focus off the growing threat in our own homes, in our country. How can we defend a foreign country when we can't even secure our own borders? And despite this, European politicians are still dead set on keeping this war rolling.
They aren't, I don't think, looking at what Trump is saying, looking at what Pete Hegseth is saying, they're not betraying Ukraine. They're not walking away from Ukraine. They're saying Ukraine's got to be a sovereign, prosperous country. They're saying that Putin can't win. They're saying that they'll continue to support Ukraine. What they are saying is that they want the Europeans to step up and do more.
Well, in my view, Boris is utterly delusional, because this is actually what Trump said.
But we want to end that war. That war is a disaster. It's a really bloody, horrible war.
A little bit different there, isn't it, between the two? It's time to face the music. We need to acknowledge and learn from our past mistakes and push for a resolution that prevents further catastrophe and, importantly, avoids World War III. This isn't about capitulation. It's about survival and sanity in a world that is teetering on the brink. We have to end this war now. More people, innocent people, are going to die if we don't. And at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. But let's get the thoughts of my panel. Former Labour advisor Stella Shantikidu, see, I can say it. Suzanne Evans, political consultant, director of Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe. Look, guys, this is quite a difficult topic, and I know people's emotions are very high about this, and I know there's a lot of people who are watching this who are going to go, absolutely not, Alex, you are out of touch. Ukraine's sovereign territory was invaded. We must stop Putin going further. And just to be clear, I said it at the end, I don't want my words cut up and edited by somebody. I want Ukraine to survive. I want Ukraine to win the war. I respect their sovereign territory. However, I don't believe anyone can win this war. Suzanne, you've told me you might be a little bit on the fence about where to go on this one, but what do you think is the right decision here?
You know, I think first of all, I'm absolutely furious because if Trump had been president when the war wouldn't have started, to be honest. So, in a sense, I think Trump is being wholly honest in wanting to end it. If he'd been president at the time, Putin would never have invaded. It was because Joe Biden was such a soft touch that he felt able to get away with it. But we are where we are. Now, we all thought Russia would absolutely hammer Ukraine. They didn't. To its absolute credit, Ukraine fought back, and it fought back hard. But Ukraine was never going to win this war. And I said this right from the word go. And I'm absolutely not pro-Putin. I can't stand the man. I think he's evil. The world would be a better place without him. But they were quite clearly always going to win. I knew sanctions wouldn't work. Russia had too many resources for that. So we've got this horrible situation now where we've had stalemate, I think, pretty much now for a couple of years. The war isn't going one way or the other. 1 million people have died on both sides. And yes, of course, nobody wants war to continue. It must end. But how the heck do you tell that to the people that have been annexed now by Russia? How do you tell that to the mothers and fathers of those people that have been slaughtered in Ukraine? That, oh, we're going to do a deal and Putin's basically going to get away with it, because that's how it's looking to me. So, yeah, I'm really confused about this. Loathe Putin. Frankly, I don't trust Zelensky either. You know, just last week we had this admission that $100 billion of US aid has just gone missing. What's he done with that money? So, you know, he's obviously the weaker of the two powers, if you like, but I don't really trust any of them. But maybe it is time to draw a line on it. But how that is done, I wouldn't want to be at the negotiation table trying to work that out.
Look, Stella, it's so complicated because, of course, a lot of people want the war to end. America seems like it's had enough, and they are, of course, footing the bill for this, so to speak. They're footing the weapons, footing the bill. Trump said that he reckons it's been $350 billion sent to Ukraine. How does this war end in a way that Ukraine and everybody can walk away? Because at the end of the day, when a war ends, both sides have got to declare victory in some way.
What infuriates me the most about Donald Trump is that he claims to be a business person, but really what he's really good at is showbiz. And what he loves more than anything is to show to people that he's winning. Yeah. So he loves coming up and saying, oh, I got a deal. I got the best deal ever. He did the same thing last time he was president with the Taliban. And we saw what happened in Afghanistan. Trump was claiming that he had everything under control. But really, this is not the case. So while it fits other world leaders because they need to be diplomatic. They have to pretend at the very least that there are productive conversations happening in the hope that productive conversations will actually happen with him. But in reality, what we are seeing in front of our eyes is that Trump loves a strong man like Putin. He loves showing that there is momentum forward because the moment he came into the presidency. But he's appeasing Putin. He's not going to be helpful in this situation. We all want peace. Of course, we all want peace. But the Ukrainian people want to live in a democracy. They do not want to live under the Russian regime. And I do not buy it for once. All of the headlines today that were saying, oh, of course, Ukraine is going to be involved. Trump is just opening the conversation. He's just having a dialogue. No, wait a minute. This is a massive U-turn on U.S. foreign policy up until this point. Biden was calling Putin a criminal, which is what he is.
Stephen, what do you make of all this? This, of course, I want this war to end. I'm most concerned about escalation, about more people's lives. A whole generation. I spoke to a NATO general, actually. He told me a whole generation of young men have been wiped out in Ukraine. What do you think is a good end to this war?
I think it's a good end to the war as soon as it ends. That's what it should do. This is a war that was created by the neo-conservatives who want to take the assets of Ukraine,
which they've done, by the way, right?
Which they've done. BlackRock owns it. Halliburton own it. I mean, if anyone thinks that Ukraine owns anything of their land when what happens to them, they're living in cloud cuckoo land. They owe so much to all these different companies and people that have got their fingers in the pie. This was about the assets of lithium. This was about oil and gas that sits in there. This was about controlling the breadbasket of Europe, and it's already got the American companies around it. Anyone from the left who supports this idea is actually saying, let's hand over that wealth to the biggest corporations in the world.
Yeah, I
am saying that this war has cost us increasing oil gases that put poverty across Europe, millions dead, all to fill the hands of a few thousand rich people across the globe. That's what this war was all about.
Are you suggesting...
And this war should end now. Stop the deaths, stop the pilfering, stop the corruption, stop the fraud. I am sick of people dying so that people can get rich.
Are you suggesting we should have allowed Putin to go on with this?
Oh, this is nonsense.
Are you suggesting that we should not have defended Ukraine? So are you suggesting that Putin should be allowed to invade another country? Are you suggesting we should allow authoritarian powers?
I am suggesting that if these powers had not come down to the arguments where you had some of the most impressive American professionals, the ambassador of Russia, you had Kissinger, who we talked about, the defense secretary saying, do not allow Ukraine to get NATO involved in that. If that argument had ended, and I believe Trump would have ended that, and we would not have had this war. To understand it, it was about ensuring that Ukraine stayed, but not having NATO there.
You know what leftists call what you're doing?
Suzanne back in for a second.
Yeah,
but,
I'm talking about saving people's lives, not filling pockets of people.
I just want to ask specifically, do you genuinely believe that Trump would have made a difference if he'd stayed as president?
Absolutely. Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt, I don't think Putin would have invaded. And Stephen makes excellent points. And for me, I think the bottom line really is, does this war continue with continuing deaths? And what I've also been sickened by is the way in which European powers have tried to escalate this this war, and Biden did it as well. You know, what long-range missiles can we have? What special aircraft can we have? There was never any question about that. Could have potentially led to World War III. You talked about what could lead to World War III. Had politicians in this country as well and America continued to escalate the war, I think it would get worse. So, you know, I don't want to end it. I don't want it to end like this. I don't want Putin to have any kind of victory. I really don't.
Me neither. Just to be
we
clear,
have nasty leaders all over.
Sounds like you are. It sounds like you want us to appease a bully. It sounds like you're a victim blame.
Really, I've seen bullies in Western countries.
I love to sit here and put the world to rights. Thankfully, none of us are negotiating this deal because I think we would go around in circles. But coming up, we've got tomorrow's front pages for you at 10:30 p.m. with my full panel reaction. But first, a new poll finds the Duke of Sussex is no longer considered a royal. Is Prince Harry more of a celebrity than nobility now? Well, I'll be joined by former butler to King Charles III in just a moment.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. It's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact-checkers. Fact-checkers in inverted commas, because it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more, which is great. He's also moving content moderation to Texas instead of California, which is banter. So now the cynical version is he's just realises we've got a new regime, it's the MAGA era, and I want to be mates with Trump, who said that I should that if I interfere with the 2024 election, he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So he did mention he might be a bit scared of that. He was involved in that in Facebook suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and I feel that he didn't like being a part of all that from watching interviews.
And also the suppression of arguments about gender and sex, what is biological sex and whatnot. You get banned for saying there are two sexes.
They're on the wrong side of this, and now he's correcting. But the weird thing is the people, of course, the people who don't like this, the lefties, this person, Ressa, is saying that this is a big problem. It's an extremely dangerous time. I've seen all this from the lefties. They just call it disinformation. They're worried about this because to them it's disinformation. To other people it's information.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we can all agree if people think they're getting their facts just directly from Facebook, then something's horribly wrong. But we know that. The community notes thing, I think, is quite good because that sort of first-hand experience people are putting down, aren't they?
Yeah. People have loads of different views come together, and it's an aggregate. So that's why it works.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because the failure is... You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys tonight on GB News with me, Alex Armstrong. All of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are coming up shortly. But first, a new poll has found that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are no longer considered royal. That's according to a survey with a whopping 60% of them said the Duchess was a mere celebrity more than a royal, while 40% said the same for Harry. Well, the poll reveals a shift in the public opinion 4 years after the couple ditched their royal duties and fled to the US. So, should we be dropping the royal title from Prince Harry? I'm joined now by British former butler to King Charles, Grant Harold. Grant, welcome. Of course, you know, the Montecito couple are now doing a little bit less favourably in American opinion polls as well. Is this their own doing, that they're not seen as royal anymore because they keep on going on celebrity TV shows and things like that?
Good evening, thank you for having me on. Do you know, I've always said that since they left the royal family, they are celebrity royals. That's exactly how I describe them. The only thing, they are still, and this is what I keep kind of stressing, they are still members of the royal family. OK, they're not working members of the royal family, but Prince Harry's still classed as a senior member of the royal family, as such as a councillor of state, which means, God forbid, but if the king was unable to perform his duties and other family members are called in, Harry is one of them. So technically, he's still a senior member of the royal family. But as you've mentioned, the fact they've picked this different lifestyle, living in the States, living that kind of Hollywood life, of course, they become celebrities. But as I keep calling them, they're a very kind of modern celebrity royals. That's the only way to describe them.
Yeah, they've been the sort of subject of a lot of ridicule, at least over the last couple of years. You know, their Spotify deal fell through. South Park did that whole episode on them doing this apology tour, or the privacy tour, should I say. And that's really sparked some sort of American backlash to them. I mean, can they catch a break? I mean, what have they got to do for people to start seeing them in favourable light?
I really don't know. I think that so much time has now passed, and a lot of people, both in the States and the UK, have kind of made their minds up. It's interesting, talking to a lot of kind of royal fans that I get to meet. They have a love for Harry. I mean, absolutely a love for Harry. And they seem to think that obviously since his marriage, he's changed. It's difficult to kind of pinpoint what has happened or what the reasons are. It could be, you know, he's gone to the States, it's a new life, new beginning kind of thing. It's really difficult to pinpoint why and how it's all kind of gone so badly wrong, because it has, and that's the reality of it. When they got married, we all assumed they would undertake royal duties in the UK. They would follow like his brother has done and his sister-in-law. Of course, that's what's not happened. And initially, I think everybody kind of thought, okay, we'll see what happens. But the more that they do, and the more they go down this kind of media tunnel, if you like, with all these kind of different deals that they're doing, people are getting kind of tired and a bit kind of fed up. And I think also because they keep stressing they want their privacy and they want to be left alone, but then the next minute they're doing these documentaries and inviting people into their homes, it's causing a lot of confusion, which is why I think people are getting a bit frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a younger person and you haven't grown up watching, you know, the royal family or seeing Prince Harry in the spotlight, I guess you might assume that he is really not a working royal anymore, right? You'd see him over in America and you'd see him going on things like late-night talk shows, participating in comedy sketches, perhaps, sometimes maybe not speaking very royally when you compare him with someone like Prince William, for example. Is this inevitable that Prince Harry will never be able to come back to royal duties now? He's changed so much, and the media perception of him has changed so much, he'll never be able to come back in the fold if he wanted to.
If I can draw a very strange kind of comparison, if you think back to obviously his great uncle Edward VIII, obviously, who abdicated, and similarly, you know, for love, for a divorcee, again, same situation as with Harry and Meghan, they left the country. They didn't become celebrities. They were still classed as, I mean, they were kind of, I suppose, outcasts, if you like, but they were still royals. They were always classed as royals, even though they didn't exactly carry out the kind of royal duties on behalf of the UK. So it's kind of similar to that, but then it's different, as you said, because of the fact that they've gone down this kind of celebrity route. Do I think he could come back? I don't know. I've always said it's possible. You never know. I mean, I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I mean, for all we know, they could be having discussions again with the king, with his brother. It's difficult to know. Can he come back after everything that's happened? Yes, it's possible, but it's the trust part. I know William, the Prince of Wales, and the king, they're both, one thing that's huge to them is trust and loyalty. And the fact that that's probably been lost, I don't see how they come back from that. That's the tricky part. It's not so much coming back and, you know, possibly undertaking some royal duties if they're allowed to. It's the trust part. How do they know that he won't suddenly do this again and go off and do another documentary? That's the difficult part.
Yeah, and of course, Harry's book Spare revealed a lot of very personal and private details that we don't expect from royalty, which in my opinion is one of the reasons why that opinion poll is changing. He's just not seen with that same private life that the royals tend to keep. And, you know, Meghan's also got this new show coming out soon, I believe, on Netflix. Is that going to just, if it flops, I don't know if even is it, maybe it is out, I don't know. I don't watch any of her stuff, if I'm being completely frank. But, you know, if this flops, is this really going to put them in trouble? Because they haven't had a very successful media career yet, have they?
No, interestingly, I might be wrong about this. I think it was supposed to come out, but because obviously the fires in California, it was delayed. I think that was the reason. Again, it's possible, you know, it could flop. I saw a clip. Like you, I don't really try to watch these kind of things, but I did see a clip, and the clip actually was okay. I actually was quite amazed because it was just Meghan in her kitchen and chatting to somebody, and she was busy cooking something, a bit of a kind of cooking kind of show. And I thought, this is very different. Now, that could work. Of course it could work, but is it too far down the line after what they've already done? If she'd done that at the very beginning, we might have thought, okay, she's going to carry on with her media career. This is quite a nice thing to do. But it's the fact of what they've already done, that's the difficult part. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of people watching it. And again, who knows? It might make some people change their minds. It might make some people think, do you know what? We were right in the first instance. This is a celebrity couple that have gone off to the States and they're trying to do their own thing and not that successful.
Well, Grant Harold there, thank you so much for joining us. Former butler to King Charles, Grant Harold there, thank you very much. But moving on, we're giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's all the details you need.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is, 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck. But coming up, the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages is here, and why can't reform voters get a date this Valentine's Day? All that and much more next.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
If you're looking to escape the cold weather in the UK and find some winter sun, it will be fine in Spain this weekend, but rather unsettled through much of Italy and Greece, an area of low pressure, and the Burao wind for Croatia continues to blow very strong, particularly towards the north. Meanwhile, much more settled weather, above average temperatures and plenty of sunshine through the Balearics, Spain as well, but an area of rain is going to push into Portugal, and that's going to likely affect parts of the Canaries next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Good evening, I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Through this weekend, I think Sunday's going to be the drier of the 2 days. That's because many of us are going to have some fairly wet weather pushing through as we go through tomorrow due to a frontal system that's already brought rain across parts of southwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland so far today, and it's going to continue to progress northeastwards overnight. That being said, not really reaching the far north of Scotland or the southeast, where it's going to stay largely dry. With the rain, it is going going to be quite heavy at times across parts of Wales and the southwest, but as well as this, we do have the risk of some sleet, some snow, even a bit of freezing rain. Temperatures to start in the night are going to drop where we get some clear skies, so a touch of frost early on, but then it's going to turn a bit milder with some cloudier, wetter, milder weather pushing its way in. Taking a closer look first thing tomorrow morning across the southeast, largely dry but quite cloudy here, wetter further west, also quite a bit of rain across parts of Wales, northern England, and do watch out for some snow and some freezing rain leading to some icy patches if you're heading out tomorrow as well. Across Northern Ireland, the heaviest rain will have cleared through, and across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split across western parts, largely dry by around 8-9 o'clock, and there will be some glimmers of sunshine, but in the east it's cloudier with some outbreaks of rain, sleet and hill snow continuing. Then through the day we have a fairly wet picture across this kind of central slice of the country. To the far south, avoiding this, in fact across the southwest, things turning brighter later on, and further north-northwest, some glimmers of sunshine across some parts of Scotland. Temperatures are turning a bit milder from the west, but where you're stuck under the cloud with the rain, it is going to feel pretty chilly. Into Sunday, and it's a drier day, not totally dry. There will be some outbreaks of mostly light rain coming in from the east, some wintry showers across parts of Scotland, and even a bit of rain pushing into the far west too. But elsewhere, something a bit drier, perhaps even a bit brighter at times. And there's something a bit brighter to come early next week, but further rain arriving from the west. Bye-bye.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Alex Armstrong, only on GB News. We're going through your front pages right now. So, Daily Mail, let's take a quick look. Free speech is in retreat in the UK, warns Trump's VP. Yes, we were talking about that a little bit earlier on. That is, of course, JD Vance talking at that Munich security conference. Let's move on to the Times. They're also leading with Vance tells Europe to clean up its own mess. He claims threat from within is worse than Russia. The Eye, wish you weren't here. UK spending millions telling Albanians not to come to Britain. We'll touch on that one in just a second. And the Daily Mirror, my anniversary exclusive. My Caroline is still saving lives 5 years after she died. Yeah, it's very sad, that story. Let's maybe just very briefly touch on the Mail and Times' front pages. We'll stick with the Mail. Free speech is in retreat in UK, warns Trump's VP. This is quite a bold statement from JD Vance, is it not, Suzanne?
It's quite interesting, isn't it? The new Trump administration and Elon Musk very, very keen to talk about British politics,
yes.
Which I guess, if you look at it in a positive way, it shows we've still got some influence on the world stage. But yeah, he's absolutely right. It's all very well talking about Putin and Ukraine, as we were, but if you're talking about sovereign states, there are processes that you can use to deal with these issues. But the threat we have within is quite terrifying. We've got the Islamist terror threat. Apparently, we've got the rise of the far right, although I have to see much evidence of that myself, I'll be honest. And then we've got this attack on democracy and free speech. And there have been surveys done which show that young people don't want democracy. They want a benign dictator. But the trouble, of course, is don't know they're benign or not until you've actually got one. But yeah, the attack on free speech is really quite horrifying. And thank goodness we've got the Free Speech Union in this country who are doing the most amazing job actually tackling that, and particularly tackling the institutions that are threatening it. Absolutely. Stephen, would you agree? I mean, I think JD Vance is a very well-spoken man. A lot of people used to see him as this sort of like, hillbilly ruffian. I mean, maybe that was his image, I think, for a while.
But when you compare the way he speaks to the way Trump speaks, he's very presidential, but with the MAGA sort of underlying tones. And he's now coming into Europe and going, hey, look, sorry, I'm going to upset you tonight, all of you. But he's done it in a way that people will be able to understand and receive without the aggressive tone, perhaps.
J.D. Vance is a lot different to that of Trump in some ways, but very similar in another. That they're outsiders in the world of political elites. Political elites that generally, whether you're from the left in Labour or whether you're Conservatives, that tend to be Eton, Harrow, Oxford, Cambridge, Durham, Sorbonne, New York University, Harvard, all of that, the same sort of rubbish that I saw growing up as a lawyer, to be honest, and they think the same, and it doesn't, and it's all across. Whereas he had to come through the hard life, like a working class lad like myself, single parent, watched his mum with drugs, climbed up the ladder, did well at university, got to one of those big universities, got to Harvard, and was not like them. He has not become part of the elite. He has not allowed himself to become subsumed in it, and that's why they don't like it. Because those who become part of the team, he's turning around and literally slapping them in the face, saying, you have become just like the dictators from 1066 and 1258 and all the rest beyond. You are just like all those kings and queens before, and you claim to be Democrats, but all you want to do is shut the people up, take away their free speech, and that's what you've been doing from the UN to the European Union. And thank goodness we've got somebody who understands what that type of person is.
Stella, I can see you want to come in here.
Stephen, you're a big fan of Angela Rayner, I gather, then, yeah?
Angela Rayner and I lived and grew
great.
up.
So you like Angela Rayner. Great. So you agree
I like
that...
parts of what Angela Rayner is, but I do not like her idea of why she can understand. I can admire her achievements, and I certainly do that, because I lived and grew up literally about half a mile from where she did.
OK, so the rest of us who were not born near where Angela Rayner is, we cannot understand why...
No,
we cannot value Angela Rayner.
The poverty of poor people in the country if you were rich.
Yeah, well, I wasn't rich, so that's fine then. So on the topic of free speech, though, cancel culture is annoying. I'm a free speech absolutist, and I absolutely agree. But it's absolutely delusional for someone like J.D. Vance to suggest that there is a bigger danger posed to the West by annoying cancel culture or disputes about what is and isn't free speech than the autocratic plutocrats in Russia and the absolute criminality with which Putin has been bullying the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, frankly. I think it is a ridiculous statement. It makes a very good Daily Mail headline.
I think it depends on your perspective. You know, if you're a working-class girl in Rotherham being abused by a rape gang, then yes, of course, the lack of free speech and cancel culture is a heck of a lot more.
Absolutely, but this is not. But this is not the scandal we're talking about right now. This is not what he was referring to. He was referring to specifically. He was talking about. He was in a security conference, and that was the opportune moment that the new vice president of the United States found to suggest that not being able to tweet whatever you want is at the same level as having an authoritarian regime invading other countries.
So that's exactly the point I'm talking about. You're looking at the top, whereas we're looking at the people who can't get their gas bills paid for, who are having gangs of people come in from different countries from all over.
So the vice president of the US is going to... Are you suggesting that he was talking about that at the Munich Security Conference?
Absolutely. The first opportunity, he turns around to slap those people in the face and say, wake up and listen to the voters.
And you are telling me that the Donald Trump administration is the one that is representing those interests the best.
Absolutely.
You're telling me that these billionaires are better at representing their interests.
Don't talk about billionaires. Kamala had 84 billionaires supporting her and only 56 were supporting Trump. Who was the billionaires? Who were the ones who were supporting Brexit?
Okay.
The rich in the country were supporting Brexit, the newspapers, the European Union, the elites. Don't talk about the rich supporting those against the poor. The poor wanted Brexit.
So presumably...
The poor want freedom of speech. The rich wanted control.
Everybody... who are these rich? Are these rich in the room with us right now, Stephen?
No, the rich
Who are these rich that you are talking about?
The rich are the people who are sitting in there in Parliament.
This delusion about the populist right being the representatives of the people, when you literally have all of the tycoons.
You two about to go and fight at it. Let's have Suzanne.
One of the greatest threats to this country now is mass migration and the Islamist threat that it's brought in that has been completely ignored for years.
Yeah,
because Because people like Stella don't think we should talk about it.
No, and I think this
talk about it. Go ahead.
I mean, look, Stella says she's a free speech absolutist.
No, I mean, free speech absolutist, exactly.
I actually agree with that assessment, and I do think it's really important that when free speech is in retreat, and we have people being arrested for praying silently is ridiculous, for example, we need to call those things out. I do believe that very, very strongly. I also do believe that this war is claiming millions of lives, literally millions of people are dying, that we've got to try and, I understand actually slightly where you're coming from there, Stella. You want to see, of course, you can't say Russia is not a threat to Europe. Of course it is. But at the same time, JD Vance does need to use his platform to talk about what is happening in Europe because it is abysmal.
Yeah.
I think we can agree on that.
And the lack of defence spending in this country and Europe as well is atrocious.
Yes,
we should have done a lot better. He's right on that too.
But anyway, I was queuing this up earlier, but this Valentine's Day, it looks like Reform voters are getting no flowers or chocolates. A shocking new poll reveals that 30% of Brits would never date someone who supports the right-wing Reform Party. Young women aged 18 to 34 are leading the charge with a staggering 63% saying no to Reform voters. Well, they're not alone, with 21% saying they would never date a Tory voter either. So, should politics be a deal-breaker in dating?
Can I just say, Alex, as a woman who is somewhere between the ages of 18 and 34, I do not discriminate in this regard, and I think that the birth rates are falling. We cannot afford to discriminate like that.
I absolutely agree with you on this point. We do need to have more. We do need to have more children.
It's never been a problem for me.
Listen, we've got to move on.
It has with me.
Okay. So no flowers or chocolates. And listen. I think that Reform voters in general are probably quite well settled down, perhaps. But you're seeing this big change. Yeah,
I
there's a lot of Reform voters.
Not sure I agree with that.
Yeah, I do.
Not the younger ones.
I don't know.
There's a lot of younger ones.
Okay, well, coming up, all of tomorrow's front pages and more. Find out more after the break. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. That's a ridiculous story, isn't it? It's good fun.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down that boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more a social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over. But the idea of this shop-centred high street, finished, that's gone. Never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Alex Armstrong. More of your front page newspapers coming in hot and ready. The Sun are leading with this. Married Strictly star falls for Princess, asterisk, Princess Jasmine, his co-star in Aladdin Panto. OK. The Independent. Starmer on collision course with Trump over NATO and VAT. Yeah, that's heating up between those. So I wonder if they are going to have an epic fallout. And then finally, the Daily Telegraph. They're also leading with the JD Vance free speech Britain is in retreat over that. They've also got an interesting story at the top here. Miliband sticks to fracking ban days after giant gas field found. That would have brought your energy bills down quite considerably, I think. OK, I don't think we've got too much more time to talk about these, but we have got some videos to show. So Donald Trump held a press conference today with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But things got a little bit awkward when he couldn't understand what this one reporter was saying.
About separation terrorism activities in India. Do you think that should continue here in the US as well?
You're going to have to go louder.
Mr. President, people in India would be welcoming your decision to extradite Tahabur Rana to...
I can't understand a word he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, the poor reporter, I mean, he's doing his best. I mean, to be fair, even with an earpiece in, I'm struggling to hear him. The microphone was also terrible, by the way. But do you guys, what do you think?
Yeah, the thing about, I mean, I love India. I've spent a lot of time in India. And when I first went there, what really used to confuse me is that when they're trying to say yes, Indian people go...
They shake their head the other way? Yeah, it's like a negative positive.
Just to get around that.
Yeah. I mean, I do sympathise a little bit with Trump there, but, you know, he's not the one for mincing his words, is he? And we've got another one here for you. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has demanded workers return to office in a foul-mouthed phone call. This has been leaked. Here it is.
And don't give me this work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Friday. There's not a goddamn person to get a hold of.
Yeah, he's ordered his JP Morgan employees to return to work 5 days a week. Now, I actually completely agree with this. He's paying some of these people substantial salaries.
Absolutely.
Stephen, you've been close to this industry before. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with him, because if you're going to get the Wolf of Wall Street and they're all coming in and getting... Well, how can you see them all dancing on the table if you're not at the office? You don't really get the full look from Zoom, do you?
No, that's a really good point. Stella, are you a 5-day working week kind of person?
I like socialising, so, you know, I like going into the office,
None of us actually want to go to work, let's be honest.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
I think that, you know, I mean, listen, I think there could be a balance. Some people don't need to be in every single day, especially in certain private sectors. But, you know, when you're working in the public sector, I think you do, because a lot of the time you are running government departments, and we're seeing our civil service just not showing up for work. Jacob Rees-Mogg famously went round putting notes in people's desks.
But aren't we lucky that doing telly isn't real work, is it?
Well, that's true, actually. We are. But we do have to work from the office.
Yeah, just talk for 5 days a week.
Don't. You know? Right, let's get on to our greatest Britons and Union Jackasses of the week. Suzanne, who have you got for us?
So which one do you want first?
I would like your greatest Briton, please.
So my greatest Briton is Alistair Heath, who is the editor of the Sunday Telegraph. He is the most brilliant journalist, particularly about economics, and he always bangs Rachel Reeves to write and tells her what she should be doing and what she's doing wrong, and she should really listen to him.
OK, very good. Stephen?
Well, I came in with J.D. Vance, the man that can turn around and say about free speech, which is something I've always thought important. He is the man for me at the moment. Absolutely.
OK, very good. Stella?
Honorary British, so Bridget Jones. I know that Renee is American. I know that is not... I watched Bridget Jones last night, the fourth one, and I was just thinking, my goodness, this movie is what made me come here, and what is still making me stay here.
You want to marry a prince?
A whole new category, not just the honorary, but the honorary fictional.
That's a very good point, because we do
sometimes... Can we all have honorary fictionals? That'd be fun.
Honorary fictionals.
Well, it's such an amazing advertisement, and it's just so endearing, and it has so much of the best of British culture.
Actually, that's great, but I'm going to get told off if I pick Bridget Jones, because she's not real. So I'm going to go with Stephen's choice, J.D. Vance. What a man.
Very good.
All right. OK, let's do your Union Jackasses next, Suzanne.
So my Union Jackass is Keir Starmer. He put out a tweet saying you can't have tax breaks for some of the wealthiest if you want NHS waiting lists to come down, talking about farmers. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgusting. You know, this family farm tax is only projected to make 500 million. That wouldn't even keep the NHS going for a day. And he's a lot wealthier than most farmers. Hypocrite.
Yeah, he's a millionaire, I think. I believe.
Multi.
Stephen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the very wealthy Sam Kerr, who's the female professional footballer for Arsenal, I think, or Chelsea. And she turned around and called a police officer a thick white man. Yep. And she was let off by the courts. The jury vote said that wasn't racist. But I said if David Beckham had called a black police officer a thick black man, would he have been called racist? I think absolutely.
Interesting.
So, and it just shows really what's going through in some of these very well-off sports people, the sense of entitlement is just beyond the pale.
Yeah, absolutely. Stella, your Union Jackass for the week?
The person who is leaking from closed WhatsApp groups. I'm a free speech absolutist.
Ooh.
Stop taking things out of context. It's annoying. I don't care, whatever it says. The worst thing you could say, once you take it out of context, once you take it out of a WhatsApp group, that's not the world I want to live in, frankly.
Remind me of yours again, Suzanne?
It was Keir Starmer.
Oh, OK.
For hurting the farmers.
Listen, I don't get very long to do this, so I'm going to go to Keir Starmer. Why not? He's Union Jackass every week for me. Coming up next, Leo, what have you got coming up for us, mate?
So we've got Nick Dixon and Cressida Wetton on the show, and we're going to be talking about all the stuff that's in tomorrow's papers, particularly J.D. Vance. Remember, in World War II, when the Americans came over to Europe and saved our freedom and our democracy, it looks like J.D. Vance is doing that again. We've also got Labour's war on landlords. Their rules are actually getting people evicted, and there's a Zimbabwean paedophile that a judge refuses to deport.
Oh, fantastic stuff. Everyone better stay tuned for headliners tonight. I'm back on the Saturday 5 tomorrow, but Ben Leo's here from 9 p.m. Thank you to my fantastic guest producers, everyone in the gallery. You've done great stuff. Next up, headliners. Guys, thank you so much for a great show.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Through this weekend, I think Sunday's going to be the drier of the 2 days. That's because many of us are going to